You look around and everyone seems to have figured it out, married, successful, happy, and you're still wondering what's wrong with me. This feeling of being behind in life is one of the most painful and isolating experiences, and yet so many of us carry it silently. You compare your behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel, and you convince yourself that you're losing some invisible race. But here's what nobody tells you about feeling behind in life. It's not actually about where you are, it's about where you think you should be. Today we're going to understand why you feel this way and, more importantly, how to finally break free from the feeling of being behind. So let's start by understanding what's actually happening in your brain when you feel like you're falling behind everyone else around you. The first thing you need to understand is something psychologists call social comparison theory, which explains why we constantly measure ourselves against others. This theory was developed by psychologist Leon Festinger, and it reveals that humans have an innate drive to evaluate themselves by comparing to others. We naturally look to others to figure out where we stand and whether we're doing well enough in life and in our careers and in our relationships. But here's where the problem starts. Social comparison becomes dangerous when it turns into what psychologists call upward social comparison. Upward social comparison is when you compare yourself to people you perceive as better off, more successful, more attractive, or more accomplished. And in the age of social media, you're doing upward social comparison hundreds of times per day without even realizing it's happening. Every time you open Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook, you're feeding your brain a steady stream of people who seem to be ahead of you. And your brain doesn't process this as entertainment. Your brain processes this as evidence that you're failing at life and falling behind. This triggers your brain's threat response system because being left behind in a tribe historically meant death or abandonment or complete isolation. Your brain literally thinks you're in danger when you see other people succeeding because evolution wired you to fear being left behind by your tribe. So that knot in your stomach, when you see someone else's success, that's not jealousy, that's your survival instinct kicking into overdrive. And this is why the feeling of being behind isn't just unpleasant, it's actually physically and mentally exhausting to carry around every single day. But social comparison alone doesn't explain the full picture. There's something even deeper at play that makes this feeling so painful. Underneath the surface of feeling behind lies something psychologists call the internalized timeline, and this is where the real damage happens. At some point in your life, you absorbed the belief that life should follow a specific timeline and certain things should happen by certain ages. Graduate by 22, get a career by 25, get married by 30, buy a house by 35, and have kids by 40. This is the script. And if you haven't checked all those boxes by the right age, your brain tells you that you're off track and broken and somehow lesser than others. But here's the thing, nobody ever told you that timeline is completely made up, and it was made up by people who lived in a completely different world. The timeline you're comparing yourself to was created in a time when life expectancy was shorter and careers lasted 40 years and houses cost 3 times less. And yet, you're still holding yourself to that same outdated standard and feeling like a failure when you can't meet it in a completely different world. This is what psychologists call the tyranny of the shoulds, a term coined by Karen Horney to describe how we torture ourselves with unrealistic expectations. The shoulds are all the things you tell yourself you should have done, should be doing, and should have achieved by now, and they're destroying your peace. And the worst part is you don't even know where these shoulds came from. You just absorbed them from culture and family and social media over time. But there's another psychological factor that makes feeling behind even more painful, and that's something called the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is the tendency to believe that everyone is watching you and judging you and noticing every single one of your failures. You think everyone sees that you're behind, you think they're all talking about it, and you think they all think less of you because of it. But here's the liberating truth. People are far too focused on their own lives to spend that much time thinking about yours and where you are. Everyone is the main character in their own story, and you're barely a supporting character in theirs, and that's actually incredibly freeing to realize. So when you feel like everyone is watching you fail, remember that they're probably too busy worrying about their own failures to notice yours. But there's something even deeper going on here, something that connects feeling behind to your childhood and to the way you were raised. For many people who feel constantly behind, there was a childhood message that they weren't enough and that they needed to prove their worth. Maybe you had parents who compared you to siblings or cousins or the neighbor's kids, and you learned that you were never quite good enough as you were. And that message got wired into your brain so deeply that now as an adult, you're still trying to prove you're enough by achieving enough and succeeding enough. But no amount of achievement will ever feel like enough when the goalpost keeps moving further and further away every time you get closer. This is called the hedonic treadmill in psychology, and it explains why success never quite feels as satisfying as you thought it would. You think getting the promotion will make you feel enough, but then you get it, you immediately start worrying about the next promotion and the next. You think buying the house will make you feel settled, but then you get it, and you start comparing it to bigger houses and nicer neighborhoods. And this is why the feeling of being behind never goes away no matter how much you achieve, because it was never about achievement in the first place. The feeling of being behind is actually a feeling of being disconnected from yourself and from what you truly want and need in your life. You've been so focused on what you should be doing that you've completely lost touch with what you actually want and who you actually are. And this is the painful irony: when you're chasing someone else's timeline, you're not living your own life, you're living a life that was prescribed to you. So how do you actually break free from the feeling of being behind? How do you finally stop comparing yourself to everyone else and find peace? The first step is to get brutally honest about where your timeline came from and whether you even want to follow it anymore. Take out a piece of paper and write down all the milestones you think you should have hit by now, and then ask yourself where each one came from. Did that milestone come from your parents, your culture, your friends, social media, or did it actually come from your own deep desires? And then ask yourself the scariest question of all: what if I never achieved that milestone? What would happen, and would I really be okay? You'll likely realize that the worst case scenario isn't actually that bad, and that you've been terrified of something that isn't even real. The second step is to completely redefine what success means to you on your own terms, not on anyone else's terms, and not on society's terms. Maybe success for you isn't a corner office and a six-figure salary. Maybe success is peace and presence and meaningful relationships. Maybe success is having time for the people you love, or having the freedom to do work that actually matters to you, or having a home that feels safe. When you define success on your own terms, you stop measuring your life against someone else's ruler, and you can finally feel like you're enough. The third step is to stop engaging in upward social comparison and instead shift your focus to what psychologists call downward social comparison. Downward social comparison is comparing yourself to people who are worse off, and while that might sound cold, it can actually help you gain perspective. When you feel behind, remember that there are people who would trade places with you in a heartbeat, and that doesn't invalidate your pain, but it gives context. But even better than downward comparison is what psychologists call temporal comparison, which is comparing yourself to your past self rather than others. Compare yourself to who you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and you'll see how far you've come, even if you're not where you want to be yet. You've survived everything that life has thrown at you, and you've grown through every struggle, and that alone is a profound achievement worth acknowledging. The fourth step is to accept that life is not a linear path. It's more like a winding road with detours and delays and unexpected stops along the way. And some people might seem ahead of you on that road, but they might be on a completely different journey, going to a completely different destination. You're not in a race with anyone, you're on your own unique path, and your only job is to walk that path with intention and presence and courage. The fifth step is to practice radical acceptance of where you are right now in this moment, without judgment and without comparison. Radical acceptance means acknowledging that this is where you are, and that's okay. Even if it's not where you want to be forever, it's where you are now. Fighting reality only creates more suffering. Accepting reality doesn't mean giving up. It means stopping the war with your current circumstances. And from that place of acceptance, you can actually start to move forward with clarity and intention rather than panic and desperation. The sixth step is to celebrate your small wins along the way, rather than waiting for some big milestone to finally feel proud of yourself. You got out of bed today, that's a win. You showed up for someone, that's a win. You made progress on a project, that's a win, and all of it counts. We're so focused on the big goals that we forget to acknowledge the small steps that are actually the ones that move us forward every single day. And when you start celebrating the small steps, you'll realize that you're actually making more progress than you thought you were. The seventh step is to limit your social media consumption, because it's literally designed to make you feel inadequate and behind in comparison. Social media platforms are optimized to show you the highlight reels of people's lives while hiding all the struggle and pain and failure that happens behind the scenes. That person you think has it all together is struggling with things you know nothing about, and you're comparing your entire life to their carefully curated moments. And when you realize that, you can actually start to feel compassion for yourself and for others, because everyone is fighting their own battles quietly. The eighth step is to surround yourself with people who don't make you feel like you're behind, but instead make you feel like you're on your own path. You need people in your corner who celebrate you without comparing you, and who see you for who you are, not for what you haven't achieved yet. When you have people who love you unconditionally, the pressure to perform and achieve and prove your worth starts to dissolve completely. The ninth step is to shift your focus from achievement to growth, because growth is a continuous process, while achievement is just a single moment. When you focus on growth, you can find meaning and satisfaction in every stage of the journey, not just when you reach the destination. And you never stop growing, you never stop evolving, and you never stop becoming who you are meant to be, which means you're never truly behind. The 10th step is to stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle and stop comparing your middle to someone else's end. Everyone starts in a different place, and everyone has different advantages and obstacles and circumstances that you can't see from the outside. So comparing your progress to anyone else's is fundamentally flawed because your starting point and your journey and your destination are completely unique. And when you truly internalize that, you'll feel a sense of freedom that you've never felt before because you'll stop measuring yourself against others. But there's one more thing that's incredibly important to understand about the feeling of being behind, and it might surprise you completely. Sometimes the feeling of being behind is actually a sign that you're on the right path because the path of growth often feels like you're moving backward. When you're growing and evolving, you often feel lost and confused and behind because you're stepping into unfamiliar territory without a map. The people who seem like they have it all figured out are often the ones who have stopped growing and stopped challenging themselves and stopped evolving. They're comfortable and you're uncomfortable, and that discomfort is actually a signal that you're expanding beyond your old self and growing. So the next time you feel behind, ask yourself, is this painful or is this growth? And often the answer is both. And when you reframe being behind as being in the process of becoming, everything changes and you can finally breathe again. You don't need to be anywhere other than where you are because this is exactly where you're supposed to be in this moment. And this moment is preparing you for everything that's coming next, and without it, you wouldn't be ready for what's ahead. Every delay, every setback, every detour is building something in you that you're going to need for the next chapter of your life. And when you finally reach that next chapter, you'll realize that every moment of feeling behind was actually preparing you for the leap ahead. So how do you know if you've truly let go of the feeling of being behind and are actually living your own life on your own terms? You know you've let go when you can see someone else's success and feel genuine happiness for them without any pang of inadequacy. And you know you've let go when you can look at your own life and feel proud of how far you've come rather than ashamed of how far you haven't. You know you've let go when you've stopped checking where everyone else is and you've started focusing on where you're going and why. And that's the ultimate liberation from the feeling of being behind, when you've completely stopped caring about the race. Because there is no race, there never was a race. And you were never behind anyone, you were just walking your own path at your own pace. And your pace is exactly right for you because it's the pace that allows you to learn and grow and heal in the way that you need to. So if you've been feeling behind in life, know that you're not broken and you're not failing and you're not losing some invisible game. You're simply in the process of becoming who you're meant to be, and that process cannot be rushed and cannot be compared to anyone else. And one day you'll look back at this period of your life and you'll realize that feeling behind was actually a gift that pushed you forward. Because without the discomfort of feeling behind, you might have stayed comfortable and never grown into who you're becoming right now. So embrace the feeling of being behind as a sign that you're on the edge of something new and something greater for your life. And take action toward what you want, not from a place of panic and inadequacy, but from a place of love for yourself and your future. Action that comes from panic leads to burnout and exhaustion, while action that comes from self-love leads to sustainable growth and fulfillment. So start taking steps forward today, even if they're small steps, because small steps compound into massive progress over time. And within a year, you'll look back and realize that you've traveled further than you ever imagined possible from where you started. And the people who are ahead of you now might not be ahead of you in 5 years because paths shift and fortunes change, and life is unpredictable. Some of the people who are ahead of you now will face struggles you can't imagine, and you might be the one they turn to for support. So stop measuring your life against the snapshot of anyone else's life, because a snapshot is not the full picture and not the full story. And when you stop measuring, you'll find that your life becomes more peaceful and more meaningful and more connected than you ever thought possible. Because the ultimate goal of life isn't to get ahead of anyone else. The ultimate goal is to become fully yourself and live fully alive. And you can't become fully yourself when you're constantly looking at someone else's path and wishing you were on it. So shift your focus from the person ahead of you to the path underneath you and start walking with intention and purpose and trust. And trust that the path is taking you exactly where you need to go, even if you can't see the destination from where you're standing. Because sometimes the most beautiful destinations are the ones we never planned for and the ones that scared us the most. So if you feel behind in life, remember that you're right on time for your own life, and that's the only timing that actually matters. You are exactly where you need to be, and everything that has happened has prepared you for everything that's about to happen. And that feeling of being behind will eventually fade as you step into your own life and your own purpose and your own timeline. So take a deep breath right now, wherever you are, and know that you're not alone in this feeling, and you're not broken for feeling it. Millions of people around the world feel the exact same way, and they're all trying to figure it out just like you are. And they all need to hear what I'm about to tell you right now, so share this with someone who needs to hear it too. You are more than enough, you are right on time, and you are exactly where you're supposed to be in this very moment. And the feeling of being behind isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign that your soul is hungry for something bigger and better. So let that hunger fuel you, not consume you, and let it guide you toward a life that's authentically yours. And create a life that feels like home to you, not a life that looks impressive to anyone else, because you're the one who has to live it. And when you're old and looking back on your life, you won't regret the things you didn't achieve as much as you'll regret the things you didn't try. So start trying right now and start living right now and stop waiting for permission to become who you really are. You don't need to wait until you've achieved everything to feel worthy of love and acceptance and belonging, because you are worthy right now in this moment exactly as you are without achieving anything else ever. And that's the ultimate truth that liberates you from the feeling of being behind once and for all. You're not behind, you're not ahead, you're exactly where you need to be, and you're exactly who you need to be. And that's the most freeing thing you'll ever realize about your life and about your journey and about yourself. So the next time you feel that familiar knot in your stomach, remember what we talked about today. Remember that you're on your own path at your own pace, and that's exactly how it should be for you. And remember that the people who seem ahead of you are fighting battles you know nothing about and carrying burdens you can't see. So be kind to yourself and be patient with yourself and trust the timing of your beautiful, unique life. Because your life is unfolding exactly as it should and everything is working out for your highest good. And if this video resonated with you, I want you to know that you're not alone and you never were. So take a moment to share your experience in the comments below and let's support each other on this journey. And if you want more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss one.